Hi, thank you for joining this month's webinar. We're going to be talking about legal project management, a subject that's first come onto my radar, or most recently onto my radar, because we've been having legal professionals turn up in our training sessions more and more over the last few months. So I started to think about, what's going on here. This is clearly a trend, and I spoke to Kathryn. Sorry, my dog's found a cheese container in the bin here, and he's brought it up for me. I spoke to Kathryn, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years, and she was, keen to share with me her learnings. So to introduce Kathryn Roach is the Director of Paraclet Legal Project Management, and is also an experienced General Counsel. She's going to talk to us today about the impact that formal training in project management has had in her day-to-day work, and more broadly around the value it can create in legal organisations. So I'm going to go and rescue the cheese container from the dog, and I'm going to hand over to you, Kathryn. Thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, Louise. I appreciate the introduction. Good morning, actually good afternoon, everybody. I'm here in sunny Perth behind the sand curtain, so we're nice and safe from coronavirus, so I can go out and shop for shoes if I choose to. So what I'm hoping to do this afternoon is take you through what legal project management is from a big picture point of view. Now, I would like to know I'll assume that you have no to little knowledge of legal project management and a operating knowledge of project management principles in general, but what I'll do is I'll take you through them with the particular slant from legal project management. So it's slightly different the way that we do things as a legal project manager as opposed to a project manager out of the hard sciences from engineering or building or construction or in IT or in health or other areas. We do tweak things a little bit, so I'll take you through that. So why me? Why am I able to provide you with hopefully some insights that you'll find helpful? I've spent 26 years litigating. I've done it on a range of matters. One of the biggest ones I've done was a 4-year dispute was worth $6 billion US on a very large LNG gas project, which was fascinating. I started my career at Ashurst, which was then Blake Dawson Waldron in Sydney back in the early 90s. So I've been kicking around for a while. I've also worked at King & Wood Mallesons, Baker & McKenzie, which are both international law firms. So I've had the opportunity to see some very big disputes and some very big deals over the years, right from when faxes were still used, emails hadn't even been thought of, right through to what we use now, which is some of the most complex and sophisticated matter management tools that we have for a whole range of things. So I've seen the whole gamut of the profession. I've also worked in Perth at Jackson McDonald, which was a bespoke practice in building and construction. I've also got 4 years tertiary project management study. I'm 12,000 words away from getting my Masters of Project and Project Management from Sydney University. And I've got 7 years experience as a legal project manager, principally working for JKC Australia LNG, and currently I'm assisting Genus Group Limited, which is a listed power transmission company in Perth, but it has a national footprint. So I just hope that gives you a bit of a picture of where I sit in things, and that I've got breadth of experience in the law, but also in project management proper. And what I've done is merge those two into legal project management. Now, legal project management, for some of the authors, this is just a representative book that you can get for legal project management. And it's nice work if you can get it, because it sells for $1,600 for a paperback. So there is significant interest in this area. Principally, it started about 10 years ago in the US and the UK, and it's now come in probably for about the last 4 to 5 years in Australia. It's becoming a topic of interest. The international law firms are starting to build legal project management departments as an individual standalone chargeable department, because the international clients who've had it in America and the United Kingdom with those firms are now calling for it with their Australian subsidiaries, and more the ASX 200 companies are calling for it. and it's just becoming an area that is only going to get larger and stronger and more prevalent as time passes. Now, you can find, if you want to discover it, you can find there are an amazing range of texts, books, guides, you name it, you can get it. All of these books, and this is just effectively a random sample, and you can even get Kanban for lawyers, which is showing just the breadth that project management is starting to reach into the legal world. Now, self-praise might be no recommendation, and just taken from some of these books, they have quotes like implementing LPM provides significant return on investment. Now, that's one of the big focuses that there is. Combines expertise in project management with practical experience to provide a pared back project management framework specifically tailored to legal practice. And that's the key, it's specifically tailored. It's also been driven by the unprecedented financial pressures, where clients want predictability, they want cost effectiveness, and they want communication in the way that they get from their other professional service providers. They also want better communication from their lawyers around cost, time and scope. And they want tools to help lawyers, this is what the text will offer, tools to help lawyers streamline and manage transactions without overlooking important matters or compromising the quality of their legal services. And it's the quality of the services is what I want to focus on today, is to give you the basis of being able to assess when you are able to either give as a lawyer or receive as a client quality legal services. And the aim is to transform the way you plan, manage and price, going back to the return on investment, how you price legal work. Now, the focus of these are the return on investment, the tailored to legal practice, the predictability, cost effectiveness and communication, the management of transactions, and planning, management and pricing of legal work. Now, legal project management has arrived in the academic sphere. There is a peer-reviewed article, and what you can see from that article is that LPM adopts and adapts project management methods. So we don't just take project management and plonk it on top of legal process. It's got to be adapted to the project from a legal perspective. We can't just drop a PM in a law firm and hope for the best, which is what some firms have been doing, and it's not as effective as it should be or could be. Likewise, you can't take a lawyer and just drop them into project management, because there are specific skills that project managers have. So it's an adopting and adapting project management methods for the law context as a means of streamlining, planning and costing legal work. Now, the project managers amongst you will be very familiar with the iron triangle. You have the choice of scope, time and cost, and the quality that you need to get. These are all interrelated, known as the iron triangle. If you pull one out, you've got to pull the others in. So they're all interrelated, but the more commonly way that you can understand it is fast, good and cheap. You can have it fast and good, but you can't have it cheap. You can have it good and cheap, but you can't have it fast. And you can have it cheap and fast, but you can't have it good. So what you need to be able to do with your legal project management skills is to unpack the ability of a project manager to assist so that you can get fast, good and cheap, or cost effective is a better word, legal service, both as a provider and a receiver of those legal services. Now, the key project management concepts that the legal project management world has taken on is project scope, the why. Why are you doing this? The RACI matrix, so that's the who, the work breakdown structures, the what are you going to do, the Gantt charts, which show you when you're going to do what you're going to do, and the project status report being the how of what you're going to do. So that covers the why, the who, the what, the when, and the how. So moving into the why, with a project scope, if it needs to be done, it needs to be in the scope. So everything that you need to do needs to be in the scope. Now, with a legal matter, and we'll get to this further down with some of the other slides, I've got breakdowns to show you, but right up front, one of the very first things you need to do is scope the matter appropriately. Now, all lawyers do this already in a variety of ways. They just may not appreciate that they're doing scope management in the way that a project manager does. So you need to sit down and work out precisely what it is that needs to be done, all of the steps of the matter, all of the anticipated. If you're doing an M&A, you need to have the non-binding indicative offer through to the term sheet, through to the documented purchase agreement, through to the conditions subsequent, through to finalising the deal. If you're in litigation, you need to start with the pleadings. Then you may have some particulars, then you'll have discovery, then you'll have your evidence, then you'll have your hearing, then you've got, hopefully not, but often the appeal that goes afterwards. So you need to sit down and actually work out what is the full extent of all of the work that I anticipate needs to be done. But if it isn't in the scope, it doesn't get done. That's another thing that is critical to remember, that your scope statement sets out what is going to be done, but you also have what you're not going to do, and that stays outside of scope. That's one of the fundamental principles of project management, which the project managers among you will be able to appreciate. But where lawyers sometimes get caught up on this one is they don't think of the clear delineation between what I will do and what I'm actually not going to do. And that's one of the keys to working out and being an effective legal project manager. Now, this is not a legal scope of work. It is just a scope of work for a project that I had been involved in. What you've got down on the left-hand side is all of the deliverables that you want to be able to do, the estimated completion date, the estimated cost, and then you have what is out of scope on the right-hand side. When you've worked out what you're going to do, then you have to work out who's going to do what. So you need to work out who's responsible for the action, who's going to actually be accountable for it, who's the one who's going to carry the can if there's an issue. You want someone, you may need resources, they may need to assist the person doing it, so you want to know who's supportive of it. You need to know who's consulted. You'll often have your stakeholders that you need to consult along the way, or just inform your stakeholders. And here's an example of a RACI that, again, for a relocation of an office within Melbourne and moving a Sydney office down to Melbourne. So you have the different roles. So you've got your project manager, MD, head of HR, technology, finance, customer service, and sales and marketing, and you allocate who is falling into which part of the project. Now that becomes quite clear because it gives you the grip on the matter to be able to work out who is responsible for doing what, who authorises what needs to be done, and where the reporting lines sit, which for lawyers is very important. So a RACI is often automatically built into the legal structure. You'll have partners, you'll have special counsel, senior associates, lawyers, paralegals, and support staff. Generally, they've built in the RACI into that, but it pays to be able to actually sit down at the beginning of your project and actually allocate who's doing what role at the beginning of the project. Then you've got the what you're going to do, and the work breakdown structure is often what lawyers don't do. They will have an idea of how the matter's going to run because they'll be familiar with it and experienced in running the matter, but they almost always, in my experience, won't sit down and actually plan it out in a way that looks something like this. So you'll have your project, you'll have each of the deliverables along the first line in the groups of what you're going to deliver, and then you'll break it down into the individual deliverables and then with the activities. So you have your nouns up the top and your verbs further down. Doing a work breakdown structure in this sort of manner will result in identifying the project that you're on. You'll have the work stream that you've got. You'll have the deliverables that you're going to provide as part of that work stream. And then you'll have the actual activities that are going to be done. And an example of this is for the same move of a Melbourne office and moving a Sydney office down to Melbourne, you have here, and you can often colour code them to work out what is visually easy to be able to ascertain. You'll have this up on the wall. You'll be able to see where you are, where you sit, and what's being done. This will tie into your Gantt chart, which we'll get to in the next slide. But what you've got here, you've got your project management aspects, the work that's going to be done as part of running the project. You've got security issues that you need to look after. So you need to provide security passes for the new buildings and an alarm system. So that then has specific activities underneath it. Now, you notice each of these has a number, and as it goes down levels, it adds an extra number. This is the way in your work breakdown structure you can track your costing, you can track who's allocated to each particular activity, and you can work out where you're being effective and where you're not being effective, both from a cost and a productivity work frame. And cost control is the critical benefit that legal project management will bring to a law firm. You are able to work out what activities are causing you to burn extra costs than what you'd anticipated and what activities are light on costs, which indicates one of two things. Either the matter's gone in a way that you hadn't anticipated, in which case you update your scope statement, or you're actually missing some things that you need to go back and work out what's happening. So a work breakdown structure will set out everything that's in your project scope, and you'll have allocated to each of the activity the people you've got in your RACI, and then you'll go ahead and start doing the work. This is what scares lawyers the most, the Gantt chart. Now, all it is a straightforward, if you're familiar with spreadsheets, a very straightforward way of visually representing the work, the time that it's taking, and what you're going to be doing. So I hadn't split that one. Okay. So what you've got, you'll have, going back up to your work breakdown structure, you'll see that you've got each of the individual work streams. They will then appear under main task 1, main task 2, with all of the subtasks and the activities. So you'll have that in the first major column that you've got. You'll notice the WBS square on the very left-hand side has the 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. As you indent tasks in, you add the extra digit and you can track where you're going across with your tasks. So you have then a short description of the task. Now, dependencies, the project managers will know and love. That is the work that needs to be completed before the next piece of work starts, or work that will operate in parallel, but it'll show how these activities fit together, how they're linked. So if you've got work that needs to be done before another piece of work can be done, you'll have a start to finish, a finish to start relationship. If you've got works that need to start together, you'll have a start to start relationship. Now, for legal project management, you don't need to get into the detail that the project managers have of the relationships between each of the activities and the dependencies. You just simply need to put the numbers in the dependencies column such that 1.2 is dependent on 1.1 finishing. You'll have the task owner, which you'll get from your RACI. You'll have the person who's responsible, accountable. You put them in that column. Now, the percentage of the task complete in Excel, it's quite handy. You can actually have a bar across the cell that will shade across the cell as far as your percentage is complete. You've got your scheduled start and your scheduled finish. That comes from your work breakdown structure being paired with the timetable that you want to run. Now, that is often very different to what happens in reality. So you'll have your scheduled start and your scheduled finish of when you'd like these things to happen. Then you'll have your actual start and your actual finish. And that shows that these are living documents. A lot of times lawyers at the start of their matters will work out a plan, they'll work out their timetable, they might even do a form of a RACI by working out who's going to be responsible for what tasks, and then that just gets finished. We've all done it, and it gets left on the wall or put in the drawer, and we don't come back and revisit it. What you actually need to do, which the project managers do and are excellent at, is each week you update your Gantt chart, you work out what has actually happened. This is one of the key strengths that project management can bring to running a legal matter. It will allow you to be able to track exactly where you are, exactly what you've done out of what the client needs and that the client expects. So if the client wants to get a progress or a status update, you've got it sitting there in your Gantt chart with your actual starts and your actual finishes. The finish variance, you can set up a formula that will actually tell you how far ahead you are, or more often, how far behind you are. What you can do with that is then work out where you might need to get some extra lawyers working on a particular part of the project because you're falling behind, the work volume is larger than was anticipated, or you might have a solicitor who's being dragged away on another piece of work, in which case you know you need to get another resource in to help fill the slack that's sitting there. So then the duration in days is an actual duration that the task will take you. Now, what will often happen in the Gantt charts, you'll have the duration that you anticipate it to have and the duration it does have, and then you have the variance. But there are a number of ways you can draw these up. But most importantly, what you have is your milestones, which you've picked up from planning out when you want to do the work. You'll have major stages along the way. So you put your milestones in so you know, have I hit a timing point that I need? For example, if you're litigating, you'll have a milestone of having to file response to order that directions be provided. So you'll have to provide that discovery be provided. So you have to have your list of documents prepared. That'll be a milestone. Another milestone will be having to prepare expert evidence. And so you'd have a milestone for each expert that you need. But the boxes that are coloured in will show you what week. You can do it by week, you can do it by day, you can do it, even break it down into parts of days for hearings, or for M&A transactions that are very large, you can break it into parts of days where you've got conditions precedent that need to be met. And you'll be able to see quite easily where you're up to and what's happening. So this is a pro forma Gantt chart. One of them, this is actually taken from a matter that I have actually done. What you can see here is the Gantt chart shows you the progress throughout the course of the matter, how things are going. So you'll have your stage, which is your work breakdown structure. You can, if you do a full work breakdown structure down to 4 levels, you'd actually have your 1, your 1.1, your 1.1.1, 1.1.1.1, and you'd have all your tasks flow out. This was a summary roll-up that we had done with the major tasks. So you've got this is a piece of litigation. So you've got your statement of claim, you send it out to the client, you file your proceeding, you may have a jurisdictional challenge. This was an international matter, so we were concerned we may have had a jurisdictional challenge. You need to defend that. You then might join other parties. You'll need then particulars, defences, discovery, subpoenas, disputes about discovery and subpoenas. We knew we were going to have those. Preparation of lay evidence, expert evidence, conferral, preparations for hearing, submissions, and then obviously the hearing itself. Now, what you can have with your Gantt chart is 2 types of tracking. The green boxes that you'll see there are ones that are actually out of order in a sense. They're preparatory work that can be done in parallel with the early work that needs to be done. So a Gantt chart is a good way to be able to see not only prospectively looking forward, how is the work that I'm planning to do in my work breakdown structure, how is that actually going to pan out in a time sense, and can I actually do some things in parallel? Can I actually save some time? Can I get ahead of time? Can I crunch the schedule at any point and truncate the time that's taken for some things to be done? Because if I get to the end and I find, oh, that's taking an awful lot longer than I planned, you can work out where you can shorten the schedule and go back and either put more people on it, change the task, change the scope if you've got the ability to do that. It gives you the flexibility to be able to see what you need to do to get to the right finish date that you need. One of the things you can also put in is you can colour code specific events such as settlement opportunities. So you can see where in the matter you're going to actually take the step of trying to resolve the proceedings, but you see it clearly in your Gantt chart as you go. So that is what a Gantt chart would look like in a matter. This one's done by months. This was the big overall rolled up version, so that we had just a 1-page snapshot. And this is great to be able to take into a client. And if you're a client, it's great to be able to see, because you see the steps that the lawyer's going to take. So you're getting the scope statement, You're getting the work breakdown structure. You see how long it's going to take. And you can also put in as well resources. So they may have names of people that are in there and break the Gantt chart down by the name of the person and the time and the task they'll be involved in. So a Gantt chart is actually very, very powerful. You can do it in Excel. I do mine in Microsoft Project, but short of being trained in MS Project, it's a very powerful and very useful program. It's also very expensive, but Excel does, for lawyers who are just starting to get into legal project management, a Gantt chart in Excel is an excellent way to do it. And it can be as simple as shading cells and manually changing the colour of cells. Now, Project will automatically spit out critical path for you, but you can do it in Excel if you update weekly or daily if you choose. Now, what will happen with your work breakdown structure in your Gantt chart, you can also turn it into cost breakdowns. Now, you'll see on the Gantt chart, it was divided by month 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way through. What you can do with the costs, and this helps clients because they get a good idea of cash flow. Cash flow is critical for clients, and this is a very good discipline for lawyers to start getting into, to adopt this part of project management so that they can actually give a client an idea of the lumpiness of the spend, because it's not a continuous flat spend all the way through unless you have a fixed fee arrangement with a fixed price and fixed billing, but that is usually not the most common way that work is done. So this will give you, even if you're on a fixed arrangement by a percentage of a deal or a fixed arrangement by part of the matter, so you'd scope out a small part of the matter and have that fee agreed. You'd have the next part of the matter scoped, have that fee agreed. 99 times out of 100, a legal bill is going to be a very lumpy period. So this is something you can provide to your client and show them this is where your cash flow expectations are going to fall. Now, this particular one is an internal one that we started with. You'll note that on the estimated monthly law firm costs, I've got a low and a high. Now, for the project managers who are out there, PERT analysis is wonderful. And for the lawyers, what you can actually do is you can sit down and have an estimate. You work out what you think is going to be, in an ideal world, the fastest that you are going to do the task by. And then if everything goes badly, as it often does, and the worst outlook you've got for the time that you're going to take or the cost that you're going to incur, there's a formula that you can use that can take those, that can give you what is usually a fairly reasonable estimate of where you'll actually end up landing. And so if you have your low and your high, you'll see I've got their best estimate. In that is the PERT formula. Now, it's quite straightforward. It's a bit beyond the detail of this seminar to take you through PERT itself, but any Google article, you'll find it on YouTube. There'll be people telling you how to do it. And so that will, if you use your lowest and your highest estimates and use a PERT calculation, you'll end up with a pretty good estimate. So what you can actually do with the client is either just give them the best estimate, but I find also giving them the low and the high gives them the feel for the fact that law is a piece of string, and how long that piece of string has so many variables, and everybody who's got a nice crystal ball can tell you how much a matter is going to cost. What legal project management will do is actually start giving you a bit of that crystal ball. It'll give you the ability to be able to break down your tasks in your work breakdown structure, give you the ability to have time with your Gantt chart, and then you can work out your costings from your work breakdown structure. Now, you'll note this has got a lot of gaps in the middle of it. This is because this was prepared in advance for the client to get an idea of the legal costs by the law firm, but not for the disbursements or the additional costs that come on. Now, this is a more detailed one that we had for another particular matter. These were both litigious matters. You can see from the fact that there's counsel's fees and court fees involved. What you can do, you fix your budget. So if a client's got a budget and you need to work to it, this is one of the ways you can assist both you as a lawyer in getting to the result that the client needs, and also covering all the work that needs to be done. So what you can do is divide your budget up. You'll see that in the second column. We've divided the budget into $4.58 million. This was about a 2.5-year piece of litigation, complex litigation. Now you'll notice the dates jump around a little. I managed not to do the complete search and replace on all of the dates, but you get the picture. It runs monthly, and the lumpiness of the spend comes up. So you can see for legal fees, you've got 40, then 65, then 80, then 150, and then growing up to 200. But then it suddenly drops off to 20 and 5 because the hearing was scheduled for September, which is late August through to mid-September, which is why they're the highest months. But then it drops off. So you've only got maintenance, you've got general care and correspondence that you need to get across. So that shows you with the likely life of the matter, the likely costs. So the client has a reasonable feel of how they're going to have to run their cash flow. The lawyer has a very good idea of how many resources are required, the likely work that's going to be involved, and how it's going to be costed. So this is where you get the big benefit from legal project management in terms of the cost effectiveness. You are able to give a client a clear idea of where their costs are going to be spent and what it is they're actually buying. So instead of in your cost agreement simply saying, we think it'll be $4.5 million, we might be within $1 million either side of that, possibly. Instead of having that sort of a ballpark discussion, you can have a much more targeted discussion because you've gone through the discipline of the work breakdown structure, you've gone through the discipline of the Gantt chart, you can now produce artefacts such as this. Now, the one below is a similar one, but with all of the likely expenses filled in at the rate that they're going. And what you can end up with at the very bottom left-hand corner is you'll have the budget that you've incurred balanced against the top left-hand corner, the budget that you set at the beginning. Now, you can write formulae for tracking the monthly expenses that you have against this budget, and that's able to then have that discussion with the client. With the Gantt chart where you're ahead or behind in terms of time, you can have the discussion with the client ahead of time. We're a little bit behind time because of this, we're a little bit above cost because of that. It saves bill shock. It saves a client getting frustrated because the work hasn't been done on time. It gives you the ability to give real-time feedback to the client on where the matter is sitting. And if you're a client, it's the ability to be able to get a targeted and meaningful answer from your lawyer when you ring them going, where are we? What are we up? What are we up to? So it's a very powerful tool to be able to track exactly where you are at a given point in time. Now, this is a more detailed breakdown of how we got to the costs that were in the previous matters. So you'll note here we've got the month and the event. We've got the stage, which is from the work breakdown structure. You've got the task. Now you've got the estimated hours, low and high, the rate, and then the estimated hours for the senior associate 3 to 4 year blend with hours low to high and a rate, giving you a total low to high. Same with the senior associate, same with the partner. Now, this takes a lot of discipline to do at the beginning of a matter. It, depending upon the size of the matter, might take you a couple of days to nut this out, and you'll do it in consultation with other lawyers. What have you done in this matter? How long did this take you? How long do you think this is going to be? It is time that you take, but it is time that is going to repay itself in spades when you can go back and you can actually create the artefacts that we just looked at. What you can then do as this, unfortunately I can't get the whole, they're massive, these spreadsheets. You print them on an A2 sometimes to make them readable, but generally you work off the screen. What you'll see is this is the combined totals that we've got. So we've got the council together with a low and a high, council together, the best estimate. Then we've got the combined solicitor and counsel fees, low to high. And then you end up with your best estimate combined. So that's the PERT analysis that you've done. So at each stage, you'll do a PERT. You sum each one as you go across. You end up with a best estimate. And they're not always perfect, but in my experience, when I've done this and been disciplined and sat down and worked my way through these matters before we've done them, from the matters that only last a couple of months, right through to the large ones, through to a $6 billion multi-year dispute, these will pay back in spades in terms of being able to report accurately, not only to the client, but internally in the firm. You can see where you're burning costs because you'll see what you're going to earn from the matter from the client, but then internally, you know how many hours you've burned. So you're able to work out what's the direct cost to my pocket of providing this service to the client. So you can actually then reconcile where you're seeing your work as profitable or not profitable, and you're able to then work out where it's not profitable and take the usual practice management steps to adjust that factor. Now you'll see here we've got council low to high, you've got the best combined estimate. This is the power of this sort of a spreadsheet. Now, what you can then do is combine your costing and your Gantt chart, and so that you have the Gantt chart of when the work is going to be done, but then you'll also have the costs that are going to be incurred at the same time. So you'll get a visualisation of the timing of where the work's going to fall, but then also the costs and where they're going to fall, which is powerful for the law firm because they can work out where they need their resources, where they're likely to earn the most profit for the job, and so they're then able to factor that into the business and the expenses that need to be met during the running of a law firm. For the client, it gives them control over cash flow, which is quite essential for them to have. So you'll notice down the very left-hand corner, the numbers are the number of hours, and then you've got the cost for the hours. The third column, starting under 163, is actually the summing of the tasks from the month before, and then this is the summing of the tasks of the month, the subsequent month, and you just work your way down the page month by month. Now, this is what you get when you report. All project managers know about watermelon projects. They're green on the outside, red on the inside. What do we mean by that? You will often have project status reports, which if you've done your Gantt chart, your work breakdown structure and your costings, you can then actually put together a dashboard, which is a one-page overview of where your matter is at. And having a dashboard done either on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, depending on how long the matter is going to be, or even a daily basis if your matter is short and the costs are high, you can get a feel for whether it's actually going okay and is green, whether things are starting to slip a little bit and it's amber, or things have slipped and it's an actual problem and it's red. So what you'll find is project managers often get hit with, oh, is that a watermelon report? Because everybody's under pressure to report green, that things are fine, it's all great, nothing to see here, move along. Whereas really, if you dig into the project, it's red and there's flags and there's problems. How you can work that out is with a dashboard of this nature. Now, this is again a dashboard related to moving an office from Sydney and one from Melbourne and combining them into a new office. You'll have a summary of the week. This was a project that was divided into 13 weeks, so you know which week you're in. You have what the progress has been for the project for that week. You'll have upcoming milestones, the big events that you need to be aware of and when they're going to happen. You'll have the current issues. This is where your amber and your red reporting starts to come in. So if there's been a delay in hitting a court deadline, or if you're in an M&A, the other side hasn't given you the markups to the agreement in the time that they need to. They're the sort of things that are starting to become an issue. They're not yet a problem, but they might become a problem. Then you have the remaining risks that could arise. This is where you look at further down the track, what are the risks that you've yet to encounter, or the time period for those risks. So you've got in the back of your mind, okay, we've got things about to turn amber and we've got another big risk coming up. We need to start taking a close look at this project. Cash burn rate is very important. What you can work out is whether you spent more than you've actually done work that earns that money. Now, all building contracts and the engineers who are project managers, that's cash burn rates are near and dear to their hearts. Man hours burned versus income coming in is a critical measure for a project. And when you're dealing with a client who's come from that sort of a background, that's how they're used to seeing their projects. And so when lawyers aren't able to give them that sort of a metric, it gets them frustrated. The lawyers get frustrated because they feel undervalued. The client, because the client's saying, I want this, I want this, I want this, and I'm not happy. And the client feels frustrated because the lawyer can't give them the metrics to actually let them know how many costs have been burned, how many hours have been spent, but you haven't really earned progress for those. So what you'll have in this sort of a report, you'll have the item and the budget. Now, this will come from your work breakdown structure. So you'll have the work breakdown structure rolled up heading, and you'll have the budget that was allocated to it. You'll have how much you've actually spent against each of those items on a percentage basis. So that's a real-time costing of where you're up to. You'll have how much is left. So you'll be able to identify, this is how much we've got left to spend. And it's a good marker that if you know you've only got 37% or $15,000 remaining, but you know it's going to cost you 40, this is when you start raising your overall cost your overall project status for costs up to amber or even up to red if it's far enough. You can then have an overall cost status, and you can also match it with your schedule, which you can see in the bottom left-hand corner. You can turn your work breakdown structure. You can have the rolled up tasks, the big headline tasks, and you can have the percentage complete and the percentage that they're supposed to be complete by that stage. Then you have your overall project status, whether it's green, amber or red. Now, it might seem simplistic, but it is something when you have these weekly reports, it gives you the comfort as a partner or as a client who's responsible for paying the bills, or the partner who's responsible for running the matter. It gives you some comfort that overall this is where things sit. There might be the odd difficulties here and there, so you'll have some current issues, you might have some remaining risks, you might have an overspend in a particular category, you might have an underspend in another category, but overall this is where we're sitting. And it's a good way to take the temperature of a project at regular intervals on the way through, which in my experience lawyers struggle to do. You spend so much time doing the work that you don't have the time to actually step back, prepare a project status report and think, where is the matter going? Where am I leaking time? Where am I leaking money? Where's my schedule not matching up to what I planned? That sort of analysis is priceless. This then leads into the really fancy reports that you can do with, I'm just checking to see how we're going for time. This then leads to the sort of report that a project manager will do for you. This is something that a well-trained legal project manager can do, and it is something that is fundamental to the hard sciences in engineering and building. But I believe that legal project management, if they can pull this off, lawyers will no longer be seen as the harbingers of doom and high bills. They'll be seen as cost-effective, good, solid returns on investment for legal spend, because you'll be able to track where you are. Now, what you'll see here is that you'll have a series of curves on your graph, and one's underperforming, one's overperforming, to give you the comparison. Where you have underperformance, it means you've got your budget at completion, which is the overall amount that you're going to have for your budget. You'll have the cost of the work that has been done to date. So you'll have the cost that's actually been incurred in terms of paying staff, overheads, filing fees, all of the costs that it's taken to actually run the matter to that date. You'll have the work that's been planned to be done to that state, and then you'll have the work that's actually been done to that point in time. So what you can do is then, taking all of these curves into consideration, you can work out, as at the status date, which is the slice down the middle, you've actually incurred more costs than you had for the work that you had planned to have done and you haven't achieved the work that you had planned to achieve by that time. So in essence, your schedule's blown out. So your schedule at completion is blown out, and your budget, you can see with the cost of work done, is rising more steeply than it should. On the flip side, you can have ahead of time, ahead of budget, ahead of schedule. You'll have your budget for completion. You'll have the work that you've actually achieved, and that will be more than the work that you'd actually planned to have done by that stage. So you're ahead of your schedule. You'll also be ahead of the cost of the work done, so that the work that you've earned or the costs that you've earned by the work that you've done, you're actually ahead. So you've been more efficient and effective than you anticipated that you would be. So in a nutshell, those are the types of analyses that if you do the basic forms of analyses, you have your 5 major pieces of work that you will undertake. And I'll just go back and make sure I've got the right notes. Sorry. So you've got your project scope, which is the why. Why are you going to do this work? What is it that you're actually seeking to achieve with this project? You've got your racing matrix, the who's going to do what, who's responsible for what. You've got your work breakdown structure. So you've got the what you're going to do. You've got your Gantt chart, so your when you're going to do it. And then you have your project status report from the combination of your work breakdown structure and your Gantt chart and the costs thrown in together. You can do a project status report, which is the how. How are we going on this project? And if you actually engage a project manager or a highly trained legal project manager, you can end up with earned value analysis type graphs and assessment at the end. So that's what I plan to talk about in an overview sense. I'm not sure, Louise, how we're going to manage questions at this point, because what I'll leave my screen share on in case we need to jump back to a slide, and I'll just jump onto my phone to see how we're going. I think I can see the chat. So if anyone's got any questions,
I might kick us off if that's all right.
Absolutely,
Kathryn, with a comment and a question, if that's okay, if that's not pushing the friendship. So comment, first of all, really loved how you, when you talk about work breakdown structure, I think one of the things as consultants and as trainers, we try to get across to clients and delegates is that, you know, your work breakdown structure is the foundation of everything we do. It's the breakdown of the scope of the work. And I really liked the way you triangulated that work breakdown structure view of the scope with the cost and the time. Like the way you and the way you time phased your Gantt chart. I just thought all of that was really, really clear and super, super helpful for those who are wanting to go down the same track. So first of all, thank you for that. But my question is, how has being a trained project manager and obviously now being an expert in this space based on some of your sophisticated techniques that you're using, how has that changed the way you practice law?
It's changed. I front end a lot of my work. I load a lot of the work, the planning work at the front that often I hadn't done in my earlier years. Now, lawyers will always plan at the beginning of a matter because you need to work out what you're going to do. And we've had it enforced slightly more now with having to give clients cost agreements with estimates. But a lot of lawyers, you just jump in quickly. You think in big pictures what you've got to do, but there's deadlines to be met. There's clients who've got questions who are being thrown at you. You've got court deadlines you've got to meet, or you've got a transaction deadline you've got to meet. You've got to report to the market under the ASX. There's all these time pressures that come in, and so planning gets pushed to one side. What has changed with me gaining a much stronger appreciation for project management is you actually stop at the beginning, take a deep breath and think, right, how is this going to hang together? What exactly am I going to do? What is in scope? What is out of scope? How am I going to break them down into work packages? How am I going to cost those work packages? how am I going to time the work that I'm going to do? Now, it would take, for a large piece of litigation, for a 2-year piece of litigation, average run of the mill, I would actually spend 2 to 3 days. That's a good 15, 20 hours planning this out. Now, most lawyers would go, my goodness, that's 20 hours. Think of all the billable hours that I've lost and I have to make up. But let me tell you, those 20 hours planning, you will make up so many more billable hours by doing that. You'll have a much more detailed and interactive relationship with your client, because you'll be able to show them where the costs are going to come out, where the time is going to come out, where the work is going to come out. It will just give you so much more power over being able to work out, am I in the right spot, doing the right task at the right time for the right amount of money? And good partners that I've worked with over the years can do that. They have a gut feel, they're able to do it. But what legal project management can do is move you from gut feel into actual documented evidence. So what it's changed for me the most is that I sit down at the beginning of a matter and I plan it to death with the tools, with a work breakdown structure, with a Gantt chart. Well, I actually do it in MS Project, but you can do it with the Gantt chart in Excel. And I do my cost breakdown. And I don't start until I've got those done, because that sets exactly where you're going to go. Now, they will change, they'll morph over the course of a project, but if you set that skeleton up, you set that framework up, you take the time to populate it, it will change fundamentally how your matters pan out and how your discussions with your client go. So front-end loading, I think, is the biggest change that it's made for me in terms of planning.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks, Kathryn. We've got a question from Peter in the chat. How important is it to be able to speak legal to be a successful PM in the legal industry? Do you need to be an SME first and a PM second?
That's always a very good question, Peter, because I see both. I see project manager SMEs who've been in project management come into the law firms, and I've seen the lawyers come in and join the legal project management group. It is a bit of a chicken and egg problem as to, am I a project manager first who fits into the legal world, or am I a lawyer who gains an understanding of project manager and I slide into the project management office? Now, both are equally valid ways of getting into legal project management, and there's also now the ability to just get into legal project management from the get-go. Now, the benefit that being an SME in project management brings is that the earned value analysis, the PERT calculations, all of the fancy and mysterious secret sauce that project managers bring to running a matter, you've got that nailed. You know where you're going. And what you then have to do is learn to speak legalese. You need to understand how lawyers think. You need to understand why running a Supreme Court set of proceedings is very different to building a building. If you're building a building, you can do it with a waterfall method. You can do it planning out exactly who's going to do what on what day, and you know exactly what you're going to get when you finish. A 15-storey mixed commercial residential, it's going to look like this, and this is what you're going to get. With legal proceedings, it's not quite that precise. You know you're going to run a set of Supreme Court proceedings, or you know you're going to run a acquisition of a target company. So you know the result you're going to get to, but you've got no real clear picture on how you're going to get there, and the mind's eye vision you have at the beginning is often very different to how it actually pans out at the end because of all the variables. Now, if you're a lawyer first, you understand those variables, you understand how it pans out differently, you understand the variations that can happen throughout the course of a matter and why those variations happen, which the project managers often get foxed by. So each side has a strength. Project managers have the strength in terms of the documentation and understanding how to create the documentation and the artefacts. Coming from the legal background, you can speak the legalese and you understand how the matters run in a practical sense, but you can't document it. So what you really need to do is come from either one side or the other and just learn the other person's language. It has taken me a good 4 to 5 years to feel comfortable working in both worlds. or working as a legal project manager. I've always been comfortable in the legal world. I've been doing that for long enough. But getting comfortable in the project management world has taken a good 3 to 4 years because the documents are complex and they are difficult when done well with a big matter. And I've worked with project managers who've come out of the hard sciences, and it's taken them sort of 2 to 3 years to 4 years to feel comfortable dealing with the lawyers and understanding the piece of string and the crystal ball nature of the law. So I don't see either as better, but you need both. A project manager who doesn't choose to understand the law will never get anywhere in a law firm, and a lawyer who doesn't take on the detail of project management tools and techniques will never make it as a legal project manager. So it's a typical lawyer's answer of yes and.
Or a project manager's answer of it depends.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We've got time for one more, I think. Wakar's very patiently had his hand up there. Wakar, would you like to, I'll let you talk there. Can you ask your question?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What can we do for you?
Okay. So hi, Kathryn. First of all, really good presentation. So thank you for that. My question would be, where would you suggest a new lawyer or a lawyer who is new to project management start if they wanted to know more about project management? So
yes, that's a good question because everyone's got to start somewhere. Now, it depends on whether you want to move into legal project management proper or whether you're a lawyer who wants to build the tools and techniques to be a more effective, more efficient lawyer. Now, obviously not everybody's going to do a master's in that I've done because I've taken the decision to actually move into the legal project management world proper. But if I were having my time again and starting my career now or being in the early stages of my career now, what I'd be looking at is reading some of the legal project management textbooks. They will start getting you familiar with the concepts of Gantt charts, work breakdown structures, costings, resource allocation. It'll get you the vocabulary that you need to step into the project management side of things. So I would start with some of the textbooks. They all have their strengths and weaknesses. Some are written by project managers, some are written by lawyers. I would read a range of books because you'll get the different perspectives coming through. So that would be the first step I would do. The second step, if you then got those concepts under your belt, you're familiar with them from having read about them, you could look at actually either doing a graduate certificate at one of the universities or just enrolling in a couple of targeted courses at one of the universities as part of the grad cert. Don't enrol in the whole grad cert, just enrol in one of the particular courses that they have because you'll have ones on scheduling. There'll be courses on costing, there'll be courses on programming. When you do your masters, you do all of these, but if you've got a particular, your firm needs a particular strength in an area, go and do one of the courses at a university or 2 or 3. The other option you've got, once you've read the textbooks, got your head around the concepts, the Australian Institute of Project Management and the Project Management Institute, they're both the 2 peak bodies for project managers. They run courses. Now, they run them in project management, so you will get a very project management engineering heavy type of course if you go there. The other benefit you have is you go to an organisation or speak to Louise and her colleagues where she works, they can actually tailor project management concepts and tailor them to the legal world. So what Louise is able to do is take you through the artefacts that I've run you through very quickly in this presentation and show you how to build them. So if you're a lawyer who can understand Excel, that's step number 1, I would say, actually, before you read the legal project management books. If you don't have a good grip on Excel formulas and some of the pivot tables that you can do in Excel, go and get that knowledge. You YouTube it, Google it, learn it that way. Read your textbooks, then go to Louise, find targeted courses that she is able to offer with her organisation, if you're unable to convince your law firm to engage a company like Louise's or engage Pledge Consulting, what you can then do is, off your own initiative, go and do the courses at university, go and do one of the courses here, do an AIPM, do those sorts of courses. That'll give you the skills in the project management aspects of the discipline, and then you'll be able to bring them together in your practice. The big benefit you'd be able to bring as a lawyer at the beginning end of the career as opposed to the end of the career, you'll be able to actually speak to the partners and say to them, look, this is how we're going to cost the matter, this is how we're going to run the matter in terms of the people we need, who's going to do what. I've broken it down into all of the work streams, and this is where the money's going to fall, and this is what we can hand over to the client. And you might find some resistance at first from some of the more old school partners, but most of them, I think, when you can show them the benefit of the planning and how it can make conversations with clients so much more effective and efficient and just easy, I think they'll be on board. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, all that remains for me to say is thank you very much, Kathryn. You've given us a comprehensive view of legal project management. We will send around the recording when we've edited it and downloaded it, so you can expect to see that dropping into your mailbox soon. So yeah, thank you, Kathryn. Really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Thanks very much, Louise.
Thanks, folks.